there was a top 20 or 30 that anybody would kill to get hold of. So, all of that huge gold rush formed the quality, and those guys benefited from it. I did too.
This episode is brought to you by the best-selling book, Rise of the Film Entrepreneur, How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. Learn more at filmbizbook.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Michael Ryan. How you doing, Michael?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, very good.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm excited to talk to you. You've lived a very interesting life in our business. You've done a bunch of different things, and my very first question is, how and why did you want to get into this business? How did you get into this insanity that is the film industry?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. I started working for a guy called Colonel David Sterling, who was the man who founded the SAS. In the Second World War. So all of that stuff, I didn't have anything to do with that. I was just working as a little junior, making sales of TV programs and blah, blah, blah. Unbeknown to me, he had all sorts of places in hotspots around the world, which were all based in television stations. So basically, he was supplying private armies. So it was all quite interesting. I didn't join for that. I just joined because I liked the idea of being in television and radio. And then it kind of went from there. And somebody offered me a job. I worked for then Sir Lou Grade, who was a wonderful man and taught me a lot of what I gathered for my knowledge. And I just loved it. And he went from there into making movies and some really big movies too. And I got the opportunity to travel the world and, do the Cannes Film Festival and all of that stuff, which I loved, I have to say. And as you said earlier, it was the golden age of independent film. And some of those independent filmmakers became the big major filmmakers that we have today. And I kind of got into it almost by accident, but knowing that I wanted to be in something where I had contact with people around the world and travel and all of that. So it kind of worked out that way. And then that led to producing and financing movies, etc., which is basically the whole of my career, I suppose.
So when you're talking about the golden age of independent film, you're talking about the 70s, 80s, and that kind of world?
Yeah, I mean, there was this period, there was a sort of glorious period where if you wanted to see a film, you had to go to the cinema. But that soon became video, the invention of the VCR. And at that point, all of us guys that were packaging and making and selling TV programs and films realized that there was a secondary and third and fourth value to these things. And that's when it became obvious that you could do anything because the money was enormous in those days. It was a brand new invention, and the big video companies were competing like crazy. Much bigger hunting area than what we have today with VOD. And so the value was in library, the value was in production and sales. And Cannes at that point was just a money-making machine. It was ridiculous.
No, but I have a little bit of experience of the 80s in the sense of the distribution space because I worked in a video store.
Okay, there you go.
So I saw the product moving in. I saw what kind of movies were being made. To my understanding, at the beginning of the VHS revolution, just kind of like streaming as well, and kind of like DVD and everything else, the major studios stayed away. They were kind of like, oh no, I don't want to no, I can't do that. And because of that, it allowed companies like New World, Troma, the Full Moon, these kind of and of course Canon, these kind of B movies companies to come out and just own the VHS home video market. I mean, Canon was built. I mean, he was making, oh my God, those guys were making obscene amounts of money with ninja movies, for God's sakes.
There were those days where, literally in those days, the Canon boys, you could literally put a poster on a wall with nothing else, a couple of names, a title, literally a poster, and you probably make enough sales during the Cannes Film Festival in less than 2 weeks to finance the movie. So you sold it on a poster, you ended up with a film. It was.
And from what I understood, talking to some of those boys who worked with Canon during those days, like sometimes they would just put the name of the actors up, and they didn't have the actor.
Oh no, that was the last thing they did. I mean, it really was cowboy time. But bless them, they spawned a huge industry. They kept Variety, Screen International, those industry magazines going. You'd have a special issue, which would be 250 pages, and about 180 pages of that was Canon advertising. Each page a different movie, most of them not made. Probably most of them never got made, but it was an extraordinary time, and out of all of that, somehow came some really quality movies that were totally independently financed and would never have got made in a major company, which in those days was the only way to make a movie. So you're right. They did stay away from it. So consequently, it became gunfight at the OK Corral. Everybody was at it. Mario Casar, Andy Vanya making First Blood, which made them into multimillionaires in one swoop with Stallone. I mean, just an extraordinary time.
Yeah, they did Terminator 2 in the early 90s as well, and sure. Total Recall. The Caracol Boys, Mario. It was really the Wild Wild West, and of course we can't speak about the '80s without Orion. I mean, they were pumping out Oscar-winning movies and RoboCop.
We were doing a movie with called The Hotel New Hampshire, which was based on John Owen's book, and I had to go to New York to meet Arthur Krim, who was old dead, and he wanted the movie for North America, and I sat in a big boardroom. It was I was a kid, and we were doing and he said, have you got all these people you say you've got? And I said, yes, crossing my fingers under the table. And he said, well, if you have, then I'm happy to go into business with you. And I said, yes, we have. And he said, have you got a moment? And we walked outside into the corridor. He said, young man, you're either very brave or very stupid. I hope it's the former.
That comment, I have to say, is exactly what the film industry is all about. If you're trying, you're either very brave or very stupid to get into this business.
And sometimes you do those two in concert with one another. It works both ways. I sometimes still wonder whether Arthur Krim was right.
So I always tell filmmakers about the 80s, because I mean I was a young man when the 80s, but it was just so much money flowing around in the 80s, and then in the 90s when DVD showed up, that exploded in a way that it's hard to comprehend today as a filmmaker, an independent filmmaker, how much money and how easy it was to make money using those formats internationally. And I always used to tell people, because I remember seeing these movies come into the video store in the 80s and early 90s, and literally in the 80s, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if you finished a film, just finished it on 35, it got a release of some sort. You made some sort of money with it.
Well, there was a plethora of, that they were video based or DVD based companies. That's the way they financed themselves, and there were hundreds and hundreds of them. So you could always get a domestic release. You could always get a release in the major countries around the world. And those were the guys who eventually became, if they were good at it, I mean, if they weren't very good at it, they went back to selling secondhand cars, which is what they did in the first place. but which is true. And because of that, because of the opportunity, there were some really good companies structured during that period. And it was, you're right. I mean, I suppose the reason I sold my company successfully, originally, the original company, was because we had a very big library. We were making some quite quality movies, and people were falling over themselves. In the days before cell phones, we'd have screenings in Cannes of whatever we were screening, and people would literally leave the screening early and sprint down the Croisette to the Carlton Hotel to try and get there before their competitor. It was ridiculous. It was like the gold rush, really. And it was an extraordinary time. Yeah, it was we were very lucky to live through it, and I suppose to establish ourselves with it. And it really did work very well. It was a wonderful period, and it did spawn some really good companies and some really original filmmakers. And we all know if you've got a big playing field, there should be a good team coming out of it if you're picking a few players. And it did, and it worked very well.
Now, in the 90s, as we come up, I'm kind of going through the history of distribution from basically the early 80s to where we are today. But in the 90s, there was this movement that happened that wasn't around in the 80s, which was in a big way, which was the true independent filmmaking movement, which was more the Sundance movement.
Yes.
That the Rich Linklaters, the Clerks, the Robert Rodriguez's of the world, those kind of, Spike Lee, those kind of filmmakers that came out during that time. When I was talking to, and forgive me for dropping a name, when I was talking to Rick Linklater on the show, he was one of the first to come out the gate in the 90s. I think it was 90 or 91 when Slacker showed up.
Yeah.
And he said, when we released it, there was all of a sudden a business infrastructure to support this kind of filmmaking, which was the VHS world, the video store world. They needed product. Because I know it's hard to believe now. We are in a sea of product now, because it was so cheap to make movies now.
Yeah, sure.
Back then, I tell people, I'm like, I used to watch every week what came out. Like I could literally watch all the releases of the week, which was maybe 3, 4, 5. It was a crazy week, and I would be able to watch every movie that got released in the United States, which was that many. So there was a lack of that. So there was this infrastructure for that moment in independent film. How did the markets work with these kind of films? Because they weren't genre. Some were, but like the John Pearsons of the world, and obviously the Weinsteins and what they were doing. How did the markets work with this new movement, the 90s kind of Sundance independent movement?
I think it was almost a reaction against the sort of rather crass approach to filmmaking.
You mean the Cannon Boys? The Cannon Boys.
Exactly. And there was that kind of cheapness to it and shabbiness to it. And they were just making films that, as I said, just you stick a title on the wall and you make it. There was no real content. And then people, we all talk about Harvey in derogatory ways, but there was the positive side to him and the Weinstein Company, the Miramax before them. And they began to concentrate on quality because they realized there was a sustainable market out there for more small movies that cost very little money with 1 or 2 actors, quality actors who weren't necessarily big marquee stars. And it became a business, and it really was a business. And those people were able to make movies at a price, and they were sustainable movies that proper film buffs like yourself in those days would be able to go and see and enjoy. So I think it also spawned that, and it spawned Sundance. I went to the first Sundance. I lectured at his, place there on the mountain.
The Institute, the Institute.
Yeah. I did all of that stuff, and that was spawned by all of those days. Of course, Sundance concentrated on the quality and the uniqueness and the quirkiness, but it was all there to see. So, as I said earlier, you make enough movies, and some of them are going to be little nuggets, and that's how it started. And people like Rodriguez and all of those guys,
Tarantino and those guys,
they all came out of that pool and established themselves as a sort of shining example of how to do it, rather than do it in a crass way. And I think really it's established what we have today, which is a huge gulf between the big, massive movies, the Marvel movies and things like that, the tentpole movies that the majors make and some other companies, and that the gulf in the middle is enormous. And that was created in those days, I think, by all of the schlock that was being made. And then those little diamonds that came out of it, which people like Harvey Weinstein and others, Bob Shea, people kind of recognized that, hang on a minute, there's a bit of quality here. This isn't going to disappear down the DVD drain. We can make money out of this, and it's sustainable, and it will carry on. And then it becomes worthwhile on the shelf of your company if it's part of your library. And in a way, that's what we did at my company. And we had 300 or 400 movies, but there was a top 20 or 30 that anybody would kill to get hold of. So, all of that huge gold rush formed the quality, and those guys benefited from it. I did too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then also the opening of the international market, which was bringing over international films. And I know the Weinsteins and Miramax did a fantastic job of bringing in like A Life Is Beautiful and a lot of these directors that we had really never heard of in the States and in the West, and spotlighting them in a way that didn't exist before.
That's right. I mean, you have directors like Chabrol and
Kieslowski.
Yeah. I mean, and that the international marketplace opened up, and people realized it wasn't just to sell American independent movies. It was actually spurring those people in those France, Germany, wherever they were, actually spurring them on to make more internationally acceptable movies, even though they were local stories. And I think that helped enormously. The marketplace, the Cannes, the AFM, the Venice, Toronto, all benefited by that. And you had this huge conglomerate of people turning up, desperate to buy rights. And that became a market, and that became a proper business. So film markets became not just a sort of cheap film festival. It became a proper sustainable business. And I think that's why the AFM was formed 40 odd years ago, but it was formed by all of the professionals in the movie industry thinking, we can't just rely on Cannes and Berlin and Venice. We've got to create something ourselves. And it was that, that made it work, and still does. They all of those people, it's still a traveling circus, and they go to 3, 4, 5. It really is a circus. 3, 4, or 5 of those events a year. And it still surprises me, actually, in the days of doing things like this, that it still works. I suppose I'm a particular person that likes human contact, and I think I can do a deal or make a co-production far better if I'm sitting down opposite somebody than I can on a camera and a screen. And that still works, I think, and that human quality. Let's face it, we make films so that we can entertain as many people as possible. So in order to do that, you've got to have a team.
So you were one of the co-founders of AFM, if I'm not mistaken.
I was indeed. Yeah, there are very few left. It was just literally, we realized that at a certain point in the year, which then happened to be February, March, we were thinking, there's nothing there in the calendar. There's a big hole. We could make use of this. And there are about 10 or 15 of us that got together, and we put up, I think it was $30,000 each, which in those days was actually quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
You're thinking, oh God, really? That's a lot of money. How do I do that? Anyway, we did it. A lot of us did it. A handful of us did it. That created a fund of enough money to make it work, and it worked very well. It's, will it survive and prosper as it has done with the pandemic in the middle? I don't know. I mean, people have discovered this, and they can use this as a tool very effectively. But I think people will still turn up to do what they do there.
Well, it's kind of like what happened with the film festivals. Like, yeah, you can watch a movie on your screen, but there's a thing about a film festival that it's very difficult to replicate in a virtual world, at least until my generation dies off. Maybe the generations behind me won't understand it, but I
don't know. I mean, I still, you're right. I mean, it is a generational thing, and I'd still, my friends' kids, some of them like you and I are still becoming film buffs. So maybe there's hope, but there's still that sort of collective sense of seeing something special in a special place, and whether that's your local
communal in a communal thing.
It's a communal experience, and it works for a lot of movies, especially thriller, horror, comedy. But that collective experience really works. So I don't think that'll disappear. What might disappear is film festivals in certain places that aren't going to work. You've got to be very special to have a film festival that people want to travel thousands of miles to and spend loads of money. But if you're a producer, it's by far the best way to launch a movie. If you're launching it to the world and the press, that's one thing. If you're launching it to sell it, That's a whole other exercise. But all of those things are possible at the right festival at the right time. And if you get it right, you can, and I've done it hundreds of times. You time it right, and that's in the lap of the gods most of the time. It's not because you're so clever. It's is it ready in time? And if it is ready in time, and it's the right festival, and you get the right reaction, then it works, and it still does work. And I think that will continue to work as a marketing tool. And it works the other way. I had a movie with Timothy Dalton and Valerio Golino. It was a historical thing. Mm-hmm. And a very good director whose name now escapes me. And we got into Cannes because it was a French co-production, so I think the French strangled Gilles Jacob to get it in. And having got it in, we had a great screening. And I thought the movie played terribly. I was there. And the following morning, in the press, one of the reviewers, very clever, he said, I thought it was strange at a strange point in the movie, in the middle of the film, there was clapping until I realized that people were leaving the cinema. It was the sound of the seats doing that as they left.
Oh, that's brutal.
That was it. The film died that very morning. It died, and there was no way back. So that's the gamble, isn't it? It's a great opportunity, but if you get it wrong, Jesus, you're really screwed.
Well, and I think what you're saying is there's value in what you're saying in regards to festivals. There are 5, maybe 10 in the world that matter.
Yeah,
and the rest.
But what's happening now which is kind of encouraging, it kind of works alongside local production. And Netflix, the streamers are getting involved in this. They're making films in strange places where they want to launch their own service. So you're getting Portuguese language movies at the Burkina Faso Film Festival. So that can work, and it can work in a sales producer type way, in that you identify it, you make a small film, you go to the right places within a 12-month period, and you can make sales and find distributors in each of those places. So as a kind of local exercise, it still does work. If you plan it properly and you're lucky, it does work. And so I think that part of it will carry on. I think that's part of an exercise, a marketing exercise that we can still use. And if you use it intelligently, it works.
Now, I'd love to talk to you about the Netflix effect, because when streaming showed up, just like everything else that happens in our business, when VHS showed up, everyone's like, that's a fad. When DVD shows up, it's a fad. When streaming showed up, they're like, this is never really going to take off. I mean, because if I remember logging into Netflix streaming, it was horrible. Their movies were horrible. They had nothing. They had no licenses. They had nothing. It was atrocious. I'm like, how is this even going to go anywhere? I even did that it was in 2012, I think it was, or 2011 when it came out. But the impact I haven't seen an impact so massive on our industry you could argue VHS was kind of like if VHS was an atomic bomb, streaming was basically the nuclear version of that, 20 times Hiroshima kind of seismic shift. And it has completely changed our business model. It has devalued the movie. Because now, before I always tell filmmakers this. I go, look, before our movies were worth $24.99, then retail. Then they were worth $3.99 for rental. And then when TVOD showed up, okay, we still can get $9.99 and maybe $2.99 if you're HD, maybe $3.99, and there was still some value there. But now our movies, generally speaking, and we could talk about the details of it, are worth less than a penny per view. And before, it used to be $3.99. So it's become almost unsustainable as a business in the independent world unless you go down bigger stars, selling internationally. You have to become much better at your job. Where, like we were talking, in the 80s and 90s, a car salesman could come in and make a fortune and not really know anything about the business, throw up a couple ninjas, and we're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah.
So what's your thoughts?
Well, I think you're right. I think what the sort of secret ingredient, if you like, is enormous public funding. very clever people who've structured proper companies, and the car dealers and the VHS traders were, as you said originally, they were from nowhere, and in a way the majors shunned it because it wasn't a business that they understood or wanted to be in. It was rather tacky. Netflix and the others, Amazon, whoever, have made it into something massive, obviously. I mean, it is so huge. Nobody really understands it, I don't think. I'm sure they do. But it's the money is utterly massive. It's mind-boggling. And I think that's it. They've got a corporate structure that works. They've got banking and shareholders and investors that work. And it's become a behemoth that it just carries on working. And I think it's kind of indestructible. It's very difficult, despite what they say, to sell a movie to Netflix. Because they want to own the world, and if you're doing what I do, which is co-production, etc., you're putting together that jigsaw puzzle all the time. And at a certain point in time, when a Netflix comes in, it doesn't really work for them because they're going to own the world. And you say, hang on, I've got France, Germany, Spain, and Italy already in. I'm not going to kick them out because they're part of my structure. So it kind of doesn't work together. Occasionally, we do business with them on a North American deal or a UK deal or a part of Europe, but generally it's very difficult to do that. And despite their announcing that they're spending 25-30 billion on acquisitions, it's more we'll buy that and we'll own it and we'll take it off your hands, gov, and we'll maybe include you for a little share, which they don't. So that'll carry on, I'm sure. And they'll keep making those movies. And some of them, let's face it, are bloody good. We're at a time now where you're looking at, I don't know,
Stranger Things, just that alone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look at what that's done to the world. Look what it did for Kate Bush.
I was about to say Kate Bush. I'm like, who was Kate? Like, I heard of her, but now my kids are like, oh, I need to hear Kate Bush. I'm like, what? We're in the Upside Down, Michael. We're in the Upside Down.
It is. I mean, I used to like her way back. I thought she wrote great music, but now she can't believe it. She's like, I'm a bloody grandmother, for Christ's sake.
I'm the hottest song in the world right now. What?
Exactly. And by the way, it's a bloody good song.
I listen to it almost every day. I love it. Like my kids have it playing all the time.
I'm sure in the background. Yeah, I think. Netflix will carry on. It will change. And only the biggest will survive because we're at a point now. Early days, I suppose, but right now where people's own home economies are really struggling. I mean, you've seen what's happening in the UK. I mean, where people can't afford to heat their bloody homes. So the last thing in the world they're going to do is to have more subscriptions to more streaming platforms. So it's going to slim down to one or two. Or three. So that's all it's going to be. Everybody's going to have Disney, as they've proved. Probably everybody's going to have Amazon and Netflix, but I'm not sure about the rest. The rest will be specialized, I guess. There's always that room.
Yeah, like HBO Max. Now they're going to combine it with Disney Channel and the Discovery Channel, so it's going to be a much bigger beast. Yeah. Maybe like HBO might be in that mix, but I agree. Everyone has Prime. I mean, so Prime is already there. Netflix is Netflix, and you're right. Disney Plus came out like a juggernaut, and if you have kids, Disney Plus is
that's it. I mean,
and if you want Marvel, if you like Marvel, Star Wars, any of those other,
what's not to like? You're going to watch it. Yeah, if you said to your kids, okay, I can't afford to go out and buy dinner, so it's either dinner or Disney Plus.
It's going to be Disney Plus. No, there's no question. It's
kind of sad, but I get it. And I think that will carry on. But it's going to be interesting we've seen how many people Netflix are laying off. So there is going to be a slimming down. I don't know how that works or how they then trim their production acquisitions budgets, or maybe they boost them. I don't know. I mean, it's my way of thinking. If we are making a movie and we're financing it and they can buy the rights, that's a hell of a lot cheaper for them than spending. If I make a movie for 25, they're making a movie for 55. And that's just the way it is with the overhead they've got. So it makes sense to me that to carry on acquiring. I suppose I would say that, wouldn't I? But it still does make business sense to me. And we still do it. It's just that you can't rely on that. So what you can rely on is selling a few major territories with the talent you've got and the director you've got, the script you've got, whatever. It's always a story. And then at that point, you have the basis to go to a financier or bank and say, here's the collateral. We want to borrow a gap from you. Here's here's the way we do it. Here's the jigsaw puzzle. That's still possible, thank God. And that's how most of the independent movies get made now. So that'll carry on. But I don't know which way we go. We still, well, even today, we were talking to Netflix about a movie that they've just bought from us, and about changes in cast and all of that. So they're a good partner to have. Let's face it, they've got deep pockets. But it's very difficult. At the end of the day, I suppose, what I've always lectured to people, and what I've always, the thing I've tried to drill into people, is that it's all about quality. It's about the story. And if you make a good film, you make a good story, people are going to come and see it, aren't they? So I don't think that'll ever change. I think that the financing structures will change, and banks come in and out of the movie industry like they go in and out of a supermarket. It's a strange business being a bank or a financial entity within the film industry, because you have to be a real expert. I mean, I've worked with banks who, when I've either sold my company or they're out of the business, that you look at the bottom line that they've made, it's huge, and that's my movies. They've made much more than me, but in a way they deserve to, because they've been financing it. So it still works. I mean, there are banks that are still wanting to be in it. Thank God.
Well, let me ask you this. So, and this
the elephant in the room in regards to what we're talking about, which is distribution in general.
And I've talked heavily about distribution and protecting yourself from bad deals and all that stuff. I'm assuming in your day, you might have signed a bad deal here or there. You might have been taken advantage of. I'm just guessing along your journey as a film producer and financier. So I'd love to ask you, because you have this history in the business, and you were there at the beginning of AFM and everything. The concept of Hollywood accounting, which is been talked about forever, and is before AFM. I mean, they were doing Hollywood accounting back in the 30s. I think the second Chaplin showed up, they were doing Hollywood.
I was going to say, ask Charlie Chaplin. Yeah,
right. Yeah, that's why they started United Artists. That's why they started United Artists, because they got what they. So, in your opinion, I mean, you're at a different level. You're at a professional level, at a higher level. You have the contacts to different territories. You can sell and get paid. But for independent producers coming up in today's world, how are they expected to build a business that is sustainable if they're constantly being taken advantage of, or just opportunities aren't as relevant as or open as they used to be?
Yeah, it's very tough. I mean, reputation is one thing, because if you're supplying product and somebody tries to screw you, that you're not going to go back to that person. So that you have to build, and that's a reputation you have to build. There's belonging to IFTA, which is the organization that organizes the American film market. They have a structure where they'll go out for you and write letters to people and say, you don't do this, you're not going to you'll be barred from the next American film market, whatever. There are certain procedures that you can make. It's very difficult. There are, if you go through a bank to finance your movie, they'll have a certain amount of power too, because they will be borrowing against the contract that you've made with this particular person. I think it's all about background and knowledge, research. It's very important to know who you're doing business with and how they're doing. If they're doing badly, are you going to go in and do $1 million deal with them? Because they're probably not going to be able to pay you. So it's all about knowledge, and knowledge is the thing that takes you through the bad times. And I think that really matters a lot. At the end of the day, if you're a little independent and you go out and making a film and you know nothing about anything and you don't use a sales agent who then will do that job for you, it's really, really difficult. You might have some sound interference because there's a huge rainstorm going on now.
Fair enough. No worries. You're in England. I expect that, sir.
It went from a sunny afternoon to pouring with rain and hailstones. Very nice. So I think it is difficult. I think there are certain procedures that you could, processes that you can go through and protections that you can give yourself. And a lot of that is choosing the right sales agent to work with, because they'll have you're a one-time filmmaker. Each film is made on its own, and you're not going to be churning them out or selling them, 5, 6 every film market. So I think that's probably important. Just talking to the people that know how to do it. It will always happen. There'll always be a company that goes bankrupt without you knowing that it was ever going to happen. It will be a surprise to everybody. Cineworld. I mean, hello.
Oh yeah.
It's a difficult business, but there are things that you can do, and most of it is talking to the right people. And I think if you're a first-time, second-time independent filmmaker, you have to go through a sales agent with a reputation. A good reputation with the sales agent.
Yeah, because they can take you too.
Yeah, I mean, you get into trouble with, going to a sales agent that just won't give you the money. And I know lots of those occasions. Oh, yes. It's a shame, and it's something that stains our industry. But let's face it, every industry has their thieves.
Yeah.
But I mean, so you can go to IFTA and say, I've approached this sales agent. What do you know about them? And they'll tell you. So it's using all of the checks and balances are out there. You just got to use them. If you just go out there and sell your film just sort of bits and pieces, it's going to be a mess. So it's all about organization.
Now, the other thing that I love about the way you're presenting this conversation is that you look at movies as a business person first. You're looking at it as a product. It doesn't seem like you have emotion attached to your project. I'm sure you enjoy them, especially some of the higher, the bigger acclaimed ones that you have as emotional. But at the end of the day, this is product, and you're approaching it that way. Where so many filmmakers walk into AFM or a Cannes or Venice with emotion, leading with emotion of their movie. This is my baby, and nobody wants my baby. And then when the first shark shows up and go, oh, I love you. Oh, like someone likes me. And all of a sudden I'll sign whatever you want. And your movie is gone for 25 years.
That's exactly right. You're exactly right. And we're supposed to be there to look after those movies. If we foster those movies and take care of them, we hopefully will do the next one. That's right. What I love to do. And we need people to be passionate about their product. I'm passionate about certain things that we do. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it has to be a sustainable business if we're going to keep carrying on. And those people have to understand, if you're spending $500, $600, $1 million on making your passion project, you aren't just going to make it for your mum and dad. You're going to make it for people to see it. And in order to get people to see it, you've got to get people to get it out there and give them the ability to see it. And that means selling it and selling your baby. And there might be things that you don't like, but somebody like me might know better than them about how to market it. I mean, and a lot of the time we do. It's like, no, don't say that. That's ridiculous. Here's the way it should be sold. And they'll go, oh, no, I don't like that image. It's like, shut up. This is what you do.
Let me put the poster that's going to sell this, which leads me to a great. I was consulting a filmmaker the other day, and they had a film that was under 100,000, beautifully produced. Nice genre, not a very genre-esque. It wasn't action. It has a little music in it, and it's kind of, a little bit different.
Right.
And they said, what do I do? How much do you think I can get for this in the marketplace? And I said, you're not going to make any money. Straight. I'm like, look, you'll barely make, if you make $1,000, I'll be impressed. And he's like, what do I do? And I go, okay, so this is what you need to do. Because I go, and since it's such a low budget, I think AVOD is a really great place for him to make some money.
Right.
But he has no stars. So I said, go out, find a star, pay them $10,000 for the day, shoot them out in the day, get permission to put them on the thumbnail, dabble them throughout the movie so it doesn't look like you just shot them for 2 minutes and put them on the poster. Really make them part of the movie and do that. And that's exactly what we're doing right now. We just locked in the actor. We're talking to the distributor who I know, and we're packaging this whole thing. And they're like, if you have this guy in, your chances of making money, there's no guarantees, but the chances of you actually see, because now you have a face on that thumbnail that's passing through that you go, oh, I love that guy. And, unless it's Brad Pitt, because at the end of the day, unfortunately, where we are in today's world, it's all about the 16:9 thumbnail flowing by in either TVOD, AVOD, SVOD. It is so, so important, and filmmakers don't understand that. Would you agree with me?
Yeah, I would, especially at that level. I mean, we have a small division called Evolution Pictures, and we concentrate on pictures around that level. Mm-hmm. And there always has to be a recognizable actor. Otherwise, it just will not sell. And the only way for you to sell it, if it's good, is to go to film festivals and to spend money promoting it. That's going to cost you more than getting an actor in for a few days.
Right.
So it does pay. And if you can do it well, do it professionally. And with those sorts of movies, I think I understand the sort of movie you're talking about. It's fairly easy to do if you can get the right guy, and it just gives a face to the campaign, and it works. I mean, you can't do that in a I've spent $7 million. What do I do now? It's like, well, you're on the road.
You're done. No, if you spent $7 million, you're done.
But with the smaller budget movies, it gives you scope to be able to do that. You can say to everybody, okay, stop. We're going to get this guy in, and we're going to fit him in here, and here. Your $7 million filmmaker will say, no, you can't do that to my movie. But you can with this. And I think you're right. It does work. The only other way is to spend huge amounts of money on publicity. And even then, it's such an echo chamber right now that the studios are having problems. Sure. Getting awareness for their $200 million tentpole films. Yeah, that's why they buy IP that everybody knows. Sure. Because you're like, when Thor's coming out because everybody knows Marvel. The next Star Wars or the next Star Trek or the next Harry Potter, because these are all IPs that we all know. So it becomes easier to market that. That's why something like Avatar that was done over a decade ago was an anomaly. No, sure. Sure.
A $500 million brand new IP with no major stars in it. I mean, obviously Sigourney Weaver but Sigourney Weaver doesn't justify a $500 million movie.
No, it's right. And it was still a punt because the actual techniques they were using were groundbreaking and nobody had ever done it. So would they do that again? Probably not. I mean, I can't see them spending that sort of money today. It just won't work
on a new IP. Yeah, but like talking about the marketing, a lot of filmmakers are like, "Oh, I have 30,000." I'm like, take that 30,000, hire an actor that we all recognize, and that's your marketing budget. You've already invested in your marketing budget by hiring an actor that people recognize, because that's going to do more than $30,000 in Facebook ads when you really don't know how to do Facebook ads.
No, you're absolutely right. And it will appeal to those distributors that distribute those sorts of movies. And the first question will be, well, who's in it? And, if you ain't got the one person that they might be looking at, then you're dead. So you're right. It's the ideal way to structure it. And if only they thought about it in the first week, they've thought about it in time now. And you're okay.
There was this one movie I worked on when I was doing post-production supervision, where I was posting on a movie, and I was fascinated to see that they had one the main star, who was not the star of the movie, but the face that we all know.
Right.
And they shot him out in one day, and they were in a parking lot. So it was the way that he was like the informant or something, and that the cops had to keep coming back to the garage to meet with them. So
that's he was structure.
Beautiful structure. He was dabbled throughout the entire movie, so you don't feel gypped. And then the rest of the movie, which was very well produced and very well shot with actors that we just don't know, worked out great. And because his face is on the cover, sold like that easily. And that's what filmmakers don't understand. When I try to just yell from the top of the hill, please hire somebody that we recognize. Even my short films that I did as a director 10 years ago, I had Robert Forster in it. I had Lance Hendrickson in it. I had, other faces that people recognize, that it gave something. And by the way, if you're trying to get into film festivals love having faces and stars in their movies because they're in the asses and seats business.
Yeah, you got Lance Fredrickson who says, sure, I'll come, and you say to the festival director, I can get him to come for 3 or 4 days. Great, you're in.
Can you fly him out? Put him up? And Lance is like, yeah, sure, I'll come out.
That's the way the business works. A lot of people don't understand that. That's a fairly simple structure. Yeah, you get him to agree to go to the festival. He'll probably have a great time.
They'll treat him like royalty.
Yeah, he'll be treated like Brad Pitt, which doesn't always happen, as we know. It still works, and it's still that tub thumping thing. It's back to the Cannon boys. They did it all the time, and it worked every single time.
Michael Dudikoff just showed up, and Chuck Norris just showed up.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, we did it way back. Oh God, a long time. The first Highlander, which we did.
With Christopher Lambert,
turned out to be a classic movie.
Oh my God, that's right.
But we it was such a strange movie because we had a Frenchman playing a Scotsman, and we had Sean Connery, a Scotsman, playing a Spanish nobleman. But we thought we needed.
But Michael, there could only be one. Let's just be honest. There only could be one.
Well, you see how well that campaign worked. But we needed Connery, and he was going, oh. Anyway, we agreed, and it was $500,000 a day for 5 days
for Connery.
And any days after that was a further $500,000. So we said, okay, fine, and we did it. We obviously pre-sold the movie, did very well. And during the shooting of the movie, there was a technical problem, and we needed him for 2 extra days. So it was another $1 million.
I mean, it's good money if you could get it.
but it worked, and if we hadn't had him, it wouldn't have been half the film it was. And he was really worthwhile. And the guy was great, and
he's Sean Connery. I mean,
he was Sean Connery, exactly. And he, out of that, I got a call from a Japanese advertising agency for Suntory whiskey, and they said, we want him as in his Highlander costume, which is magnificent, and we want to advertise our whiskey. So I went to him and said, what do you think? He said, I don't do adverts. Okay. So I went back, and they said, tell him it's $1 million. And he said, no, I don't get out of bed for $1 million. Anyway, this went on over a week. In the end, they paid $5 million. And the stipulation was that he wouldn't speak, he wouldn't have to drink the whiskey, and the only place it could play was in Japan and Southeast Asia. And they said yes. And it must have worked because they're still playing the bloody ad. Every time I go to Japan,
it's still going.
There's Sean Connery going like that. And he doesn't drink the whiskey. So I guess for him, it was quite a nice experiment.
Do you remember, I don't know if you know this, this is just a side note. Do you remember in the 80s, Madonna was hired by Pepsi to promote her? You remember that whole story?
Yeah.
Where she went on the set and they're like, okay, now drink the Pepsi. I'm like, I'm not drinking the Pepsi. They're like, but we need you to drink the Pepsi. We hired you. And like, you hired me, but no one told me I had to drink it. And they scrapped the whole thing, and they still paid her like $10 million or $5, whatever it was. And
they didn't do it because of that.
They didn't do it because she wouldn't drink it. She was so, I don't know why she did that, but she knew that she had that power and she just wielded it. And she just got paid, and they never, because contractually, it never said that she had to drink the Pepsi. I wonder how many lawyers got fired over that. Oh, lawyers, ad executives. Oh my God, are you kidding me? That whole thing must have been.
I knew about the Pepsi thing. I didn't know that they canceled the whole thing because of that.
I mean, they might have done something else later, but I know that spot was changed, like, because I started off in commercials and it was legendary. It was one of those legendary stories. You're like,
fantastic story. She probably said, I only drink Coca-Cola. No.
I only drink Coke. Now, if you want to put the Coke in the Pepsi can, I'll do that.
Yeah, I'm in me.
Can you imagine? So with AFM, I wanted to ask you now. You obviously one of the co-founders of it, and you've seen it change over the years. I mean, in the glorious golden ages of the 80s, when how many days was it? It was like 10 days or something like that. It was like
it was ridiculous. It was far too long.
It was long and money was flowing. Yeah.
Well, you could do what you like, and you'd stay in fancy hotels in Santa Monica, or I'd stay in the Bel Air Hotel. I mean, ridiculous things to do. And now we've cut it down to, I think it's
4. I think
days, right? It's five plus a building day or something like that.
Right, exactly.
It's trimmed right down. It's the right length. People can go home at the weekend. It's just in the midweek period. It's much more doable, I think, now. And it makes much more sense. And I've looked at the numbers, and there's a lot of people, surprised me actually, could be thinking about the economic world at the moment, but it's building quite nicely. All the bigger companies have signed up for attending. So it might be, I think it'll be a nice surprise. I think, the Cannes Film Festival this year was wonderful because it was like going back to those the heydays of Cannes, even though the money wasn't falling all over the place, but people were there and people were doing business and people were enjoying themselves. I think that's the thing. This is a hard business. And if you're going to somewhere like Santa Monica, you quite like to get out and go and have a nice meal somewhere. And that's
on the beach.
Yeah, it's part of what we do. Otherwise, we'd do it in a boring exhibition center somewhere.
Right, you'd be in Vegas somewhere, or you'd be in Orlando somewhere,
and you'd lose all of the Hollywood niche about it. It just wouldn't be the same. And we find that a lot of the international clients will say, "Don't take it downtown LA. Don't take it anywhere else," because we go to Hollywood once, maybe twice a year, and if we want to go to Hollywood. We want to go and see the people that we normally see, plus go to the AFM. So that's where it's going to stay, provided that. People do come.
The first year I went to AFM, it was so fascinating. I was there covering it for the show, and it was before I started doing talks there and things. And I just remember walking into the hotel, and I looked up, and I saw a giant banner that was Mike Tyson versus Steven Seagal, and I said, "Oh, I understand where I am now." I'm like, oh, okay, and then filmmakers come in expecting to see art, and like, this is not art. You are not in an art place anymore. This is business, 100% business. Don't bring your art film here. Don't bring your backyard, personal film here. That's not where this is. Unless you've got Steven Seagal fighting Mike Tyson in your personal drama. No one cares. Did
they ever make that? I can't remember.
Oh yeah, they made it. Oh no, that movie came out. Oh yeah. I mean, Steven. I won't talk about Steven Seagal. That he has enough stuff talking about him. Let's
not.
Let's just leave that as is. But look at Mike Tyson, which is such an interesting guy. He's not an actor, but he's one of the most famous human beings on the planet. And now he's like, I'm going to do action movies. God bless him.
People will turn up for that. I mean, of course they will. They're fascinated by him.
Oh no, I saw the fight. There was the movie. He was a bad guy fighting. Oh God, I forgot the kung fu master from China, but he's a legendary actor. He's up there with Jackie Chan, and he fought Mike Tyson in a beautifully choreographed fight sequence. And I was just like, see, that's the kind of movies you're going to find at AFM. You're not going to find these art house films. You might find some, depending on the distributor that might be interested in that. But generally speaking, it's all about money, selling territories, making deals.
You're exactly right. And it's the deal making that people like me go for, because I don't do shark movies or whatever. I just don't do that.
No Sharknadoes for you, sir?
But no, and I know Paul who makes those movies, and he makes a lot of money, and he does a brilliant job, and they're really funny. I can't do that. It's not me. So, and you'll find, and that's the problem with publicizing the AFM. Variety will go in and see all this stuff, sharks and Mike Tyson's and Steven Seagal's, and they'll go, but it shouldn't be, because there's a business there. And if you look around and if you look around at the attendee companies, the people who are exhibiting there, there's some serious bloody companies there. So they must. So what happens is that people will turn up and they'll buy those little bits and pieces, the Sharknadoes and everything. But at the same time, they're there to do business with A24. They're there to do business with the bigger companies that make quality movies, and that's still going on, because when we formed it, the sort of 12, 13, 14 companies that were the original investors and the original creators of it were very classy companies. There was no schlock then, but the schlock came in because they saw an opportunity, and it's still part of our business, and it's a legitimate part of the business. And I kind of cherish it, because I love those shark movies. I mean, it's a great idea, and they've made, I don't know, 6 of them, 7 of them, 8.
I mean, what was I saw, like the priest that was a velociraptor, the alligator that turned into, it's spawned. Sharknado spawned an entire genre of these films, and then there's the Asylum Boys, who are basically the children of the Cannon Boys.
Sure, it's a good company, Asylum, but they're doing it really well. And I know
so smart.
Nothing wrong with that. And as we said much earlier on, you've got enough of that stuff bubbling away, and there's bound to be the quality filmmakers coming out of it. And you cherry pick those, you've got another business. So it does. I'm glad that the bigger company, MGM, are coming. They're all signing up now.
Nice.
And I'm really pleased, because it means that it'll carry on. And we didn't build it to just have a little market that runs for a few years. This has been going 40 odd years, and I think it will survive, and I think it will carry on. And I'm just pleased to see that quality companies are supporting it.
So you'll get everything from Asylum to A24 and everything in between.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's because that's filmmaking. I mean, there was Roger Corman was around for quite some time, and he was making very interesting films, to say the least.
When I was first chairman of IFTA, Roger was on my board, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, Roger Corman is on the board that I'm chairman of. That's ridiculous. But he was, I tell you, I could sit there and listen to those stories forever. The man's amazing.
Oh my! And you want to talk about filmmakers? Yeah. He spawned all of them.
Yeah, I know. He really is the godfather of all of it. He's an extraordinary man. Softly spoken, really classy. I found there were it was a big board at that point. It was about 20 people, and they hung on his every word, because he's very quietly spoken. And so they'd sit and listen. Rather different from Lloyd Kaufman.
Oh, you read my mind. I was about to say Lloyd, a little bit different approach, Lloyd. But I've spoken to Lloyd on the show, and man, I tell you, like, he's an interesting guy, because he makes those kind of trauma-esque films.
Yeah.
But when you go back and watch, like, Toxic Avenger, the first one, that was shot on 35, released theatrically, and had a social commentary to it.
Toxic Avenger was really, it was a socially aware picture.
Right.
Not that I really appreciated it, because I had an office at the Carlton Hotel at that point.
Oh, no.
Here in Cannes.
Oh, God.
He organized these bloody great big parades of all these monsters. And it was awful. Every fucking day, twice or 3 times a day, they'd stand in front of my own. It was just,
but he was able to do what
I love him.
God bless him, man. He's able to do what he's able to do, and you can't take anything away from him.
He's brilliant. He speaks God knows how many languages. He speaks Cantonese.
He's so smart.
He's fascinating.
He's an intellect.
Yeah,
that's what's so fascinating about someone like Lloyd. And like when I talked to him, I was like, I think he's like Ivy League, has an Ivy League education.
Oh, yeah.
He's extremely intelligent, but yet he's like, Lloyd,
Yeah.
He plays this part. It's just fascinating to me.
He was in the same year at I think it was Yale. At the same year as George Bush.
Right. He told me that. Yeah.
He kind of said, "Don't tell anybody that."
I mean, he shot behind the scenes of Rocky.
Did he? I didn't know that.
He actually was there during the step scene because there was the first time they were using the Steadicam in a big movie,
right,
before Shining. And he was there shooting it, and he's like, "Oh yeah, MGM just called me up, and they're doing some new release, and they were asking for my footage. So I had to go into the archives and find all this footage I shot of that stuff." I was like, "Wow!" I mean, like, what? What is going on?
He kills me.
No, he's fantastic. But Michael, listen, I'm going to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. Oh. Well, first of all, before we get to that, when is the AFM? How can people sign up? Where do they go?
They can go to the AFM website. I think it's americanfilmmarket.com. They can sign up there. It starts on the 1st of November for, I think, 5 days. 1st to the 6th, that's right. Mm-hmm. And it's very simple. And we've kept the price down for individuals registering. If you're a producer and you've got something interesting and you want to package it, that's a reason to go. You'll find people like me sitting there, and why not come and say, "Oh, by the way, I've got this thing." I might say, "Not now, thanks," but there's everybody you will want to see, from filmmakers to bankers to equity investors. To everybody's there, so it's up to you to take that opportunity. It's really not very expensive. If you pay your full entry price, you'll get access to over 100 panels and speeches and stuff like that. So and that's really worth it just for that. I mean,
oh, I know. I'm doing some of the panels. It's so valuable, the stuff that you guys are doing now.
I think for anybody who wants to make a film, has made a film, is in the middle of making a film, just go. And even if you're just soaking up the atmosphere of it there, it's just worth it. And because there are so many people that you can see in 5 or 6 days. So I think it's worth it and easy to buy a ticket.
And it's so educational. Just even if you walk the halls and see what people are doing and selling and how they're marketing it, it is such. I always tell filmmakers, if you haven't gone to AFM, go to AFM. Just take the day pass and walk around. And that alone will show you what the marketplace looks like for independent film in the world that we live in.
You're absolutely right. It just changes your whole focus. If you think, if you're tunnel vision making your movie, don't do that. Just go and see how this business really works and how it's financed and how it sustains itself. And it is fascinating. And the ticket price alone is worth it for the panels and discussions. And you can sit there all day learning stuff. Like you, I'm on a few, Alex, and you see the people that turn up. It's like, wow, that's amazing. They've got these panelists, and it's great people. The people as an independent filmmaker, you won't have access to as an individual, but you can sit there and listen to what they're saying. And I think it's great. It's really valuable information.
Now I'm going to ask you those few questions I ask all of my guests.
All right.
What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
I suppose it's film business centric. Mm-hmm. It's the time that you should say stop, whether it be in the middle of the process or whatever. You come to a point where you're trying. And the best thing to do is to say, you know what, let's stop right now. So one of the financiers might say, well, but we're going to lose 100,000. You say, well, if we carry on like this, we're going to lose 1.1 million. So is it best to stop here? And that took me a long time. And I've done it only, thankfully, on 2 or maybe 3 occasions where you get to a point where you're pushing a square peg into a round hole. It's just not going to work. All of the actors are saying no. You're compromising in every single place, whether it be the production assistant or the accountant or the designer and the actors, and you should just stop. Don't do it. It's a brave thing to do. But it took me a long time to be able to do it.
So being able to be brave enough to cut the line and go.
to know when to stop. Yeah.
Very, very good advice. Now, let me see here. 3 of your favorite films of all time.
I knew you were going to say that. I think Cuckoo's Nest probably is usually at the
so good.
top of my list. Yeah. Second, or in the it's probably. I mean, this is really crass, but it's probably Citizen Kane, simply because you kind of look at it and think that's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And thirdly, I don't know, interesting. Very difficult to choose, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I think The Shining is probably also.
I mean, I literally have the cinematographer of The Shining up behind me. I'm a huge Kubrick. Yeah, I'm a huge Kubrick fan, and that is a masterpiece to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably quite a good 3.
That's a solid 3, sir. That's a solid 3. And lastly, what advice would you give to a filmmaker starting out in the business today?
I think story is really the basis of everything that you're going to do. And if it doesn't hang together as a good story that anybody you're pitching the story to would sit and listen. If you don't have that, you're never going to have an audience that will watch it anyway. So why start? Why put yourself through all that misery? I think story is it. And also there are 2 parts to it. One is the story in the first place, in the very first place. And almost just behind that, squeaks in just a second, is what's the audience? Who are you making it for? And that's, I find, I mean, I do a lot of film schools and stuff like that. And so many people don't ask themselves that question.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to see this?
Right.
And how many films have you watched thinking, why the fuck did they make that? What's the point?
Oh my God, so many.
What were they thinking? Who on earth would want to go and see that? I literally, the first sort of rounds of, when you do those speed dating things at film schools, and you have like 20 meetings in a day, and they're supposed to.
Oh yeah.
I remember a couple of times when I was pitched. They're supposed to pitch you the story, but you don't know anything about it. And there was one. I went to the Galway Film Festival, and I had 2 Swedish director producer team, and it was basically the pitch was it's a murder story. And it contains, it's about a brother and sister and its incestuous relationship. So it's like, oh, good.
It's very marketable. Very marketable.
Fine. Okay, thanks. Next. There are some very strange things.
It's Chinatown and it's not, is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you really have to struggle to find out what the hell it's all about and why you would make it in the first place. So I think those 2 things are it's a story, because what are you going to do in that story? And secondly, what's the audience? I don't know why anybody would make something without figuring that out.
Oh, that's very simple. It's ego. I
suppose that's it. It's fascinating to me, so it's going to be fascinating to everybody. Well,
obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, look, even people like Spielberg, Scorsese, Coppola have fallen into that trap where they think, I can make a movie and everyone's going to love it because I love it. And then you look at something like 1941 and you go, ooh, that was
1941 was the one I would cite as well.
Right. I mean, because Spielberg has a pretty flawless filmography, generally speaking. But 1941 was he's like, I could do anything. I could even do comedy. Let's bring the biggest comedy star. We're going to do this. It's going to be great. And did it die on the vine.
Well, it was shocking.
Shock. And then you have something like Cats.
Oh, Christ.
Listen,
thanks for reminding me, Alex.
It's the worst
experience of my life. I was one of my wife at the time was an investor in Evita. So she got invited into all these different things. So I went to the very first premiere of Cats on stage.
No. Cats. Oh, yeah.
The Cats, the musical. It was fantastic. And it was amazing. And then many years later, get to go and see that movie, it was excruciating.
I have to tell you just really quick, the best quote ever for cats, the best review. It's the worst thing to happen to cats since dogs. And that was like the best. It was a Twitter review, and I was like, that is brilliant. And when something like Cats comes along, and it comes once in a generation, really, where you have Oscar winners around, all the money in the world, everyone is just moving forward. And it comes out being so bad with so many good people in it and behind it is an unheard. It's the Heaven's Gate of
exactly that.
But I actually only saw 20 minutes. I couldn't pass the roach dancing scene or the cat anuses flying around. I'm like, what is going on?
Did they ever look anatomically at a cat? I mean, the tails growing out of their arseholes. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
And did you see when the VFX weren't finished? On Judi Dench and like her digital wristwatch, and you could see her watch or something like that because it didn't finish the VFX.
And Judi Dench curled up in a cat basket. I mean, really?
Oh my God. I can't. I mean, it's. Maybe one day, I'll take some sort of substance and watch the entire thing, but I just can't. I can't do this to myself. I'll go back and watch The Room, which is arguably one of the worst films ever made, but yet it's so bad it's good.
Yeah, well, there are those, but this was just bad. It was excruciatingly bad, and I went to the bloody premiere, so I couldn't leave.
That's right, you were stuck there. Oh my God!
And it got worse and worse and worse.
Michael, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and thank you for all your championing of filmmakers and films over the course of your career and trying to help filmmakers make some money with their projects over the years.
That's what we're all trying to do. It's great to be in this business. It's great to have an artistic bent, but Christ, you've got to make some money somewhere. And I'm trying to help them do that.
As am I, sir. As am I. My friend. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks a lot.